Ian Granger? The train conductor shouted as the doors slid shut behind him. But Ian didn't stop. He was already sprinting down the narrow aisle, with his daughter's tiny backpack bouncing on his shoulder, and his 6-year-old gripping his hand like her life depended on it. "Daddy, we're late again," Gabriella whispered, her big brown eyes wide as they squeezed past passengers jammed in like sardines. "I know, Gabby, I know," Ian muttered, panting. "But if don't get to work on time, we don't eat." The train jolted forward, and Ian steadied Gabby against his leg. She tugged her pink hoodie tighter around her thin frame and looked up at him. "Are we still having pancakes tonight?" Ian smiled tightly. "If I get overtime today, yes, with extra syrup." She beamed. It was worth every missed meal and sleepless night just to see that smile. He finally found a small, empty spot near the middle of the train and crouched down, helping Gabby sit on her backpack. It wasn't ideal, but they'd been through worse. He was used to people staring. A young dad in worn jeans with a kid in tow during peak rush hour wasn't exactly common. But then, the woman standing 2 feet away swayed and collapsed. "Hey," Ian jumped to his feet, grabbing her before her head hit the floor. "Someone call for help." The train was packed. No one moved. People gasped, pulled out their phones, but no one did anything. Ian didn't hesitate. He lowered her to the ground, checked her pulse. Nothing. His hands moved automatically 15 compressions, 2 breaths. Gabby moved behind him, clutching his leg silently. His heart thundered, but he stayed focused. Come on," he whispered. After the second cycle, the woman gasped. As she blinked, he exhaled in relief. The conductor finally shoved through the crowd. Did you save her?" Ian didn't answer. He was already pulling off his flannel to roll it under the woman's head. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed and confused but alive. "Stay with me," he told her quietly. Her lips parted. What happened?" "You fainted," he said. "You weren't breathing, but you're okay now." She stared at him like she couldn't place where she was. "Paramedics are meeting us at the next stop," the conductor said, finally taking over. Ian stepped back to Gabby and lifted her into his arms. "Daddy," she whispered into his neck, "you're like a superhero." He kissed her forehead. "Let's just get to school, okay?" He didn't look back. 3 days later, Ian was finishing up a brutal plumbing job when a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the building. Out stepped a woman in a navy coat, heels clicking on the pavement, and Ian froze. It was her. The woman from the train. Only now, she looked like she walked out of a magazine. "Mr. Granger?" she asked, her voice smooth but uncertain. He blinked, stepping down from the ladder. "Yes, that's me." "I'm Gianna Zeller." He stared. You're okay." She nodded, smiling softly. "Thanks to you. I don't remember much, just your voice and your daughter's pink backpack." He glanced at his truck, where Gabby's backpack hung from the mirror. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "properly." Ian wiped his hands on a rag. "You really don't have to." "I do," she interrupted gently. "You saved my life. The least I can do is buy you dinner." He hesitated. "I'll bring my driver," she added, "and your daughter, somewhere kid-friendly." He looked at her, really looked at her. She had the kind of confidence that came from power. Everything she wore screamed money, from her coat to her watch, but her eyes, they were kind. Gabby would love dinner out, and honestly, so would he. He nodded slowly. "Okay, yeah, sure." The restaurant she chose was nothing like the places Ian was used to. It had chandeliers the size of his apartment and wine glasses bigger than Gabby's head. But somehow, Gianna made it feel easy. She laughed when Gabby ordered mac and cheese like a queen. She listened when Ian talked about the jobs he juggled. She didn't flinch when he admitted things were tight, and sometimes he skipped meals so Gabai didn't have to. "You're doing more than most people ever could," she said softly, swirling her wine. "And she's lucky to have you." He glanced at Gabai, who was coloring happily beside them. "She saved me, really. After her mom left, she gave me something to fight for." Gianna's face shifted. Her mom left. Yeah, when Gabai was 3, she didn't want the whole struggling thing. Gianna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I lost my parents when I was 10, raised by my grandfather. He taught me how to run a company before I knew how to ride a bike." Ian looked at her. "What kind of company?" She smiled faintly. "Zeller Tech." He almost dropped his fork. "Wait, Zeller Tech, as in the software company that sponsors half the city." She nodded. "That's me." His jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "I didn't want to lead with that," she said quietly. "I liked being just Gianna for a minute, not the billionaire, not the CEO." He leaned back in his chair, stunned. "You're a billionaire." She nodded again. And he had given her CPR in jeans, with a hole in the knee. "Wow," he said finally. "You're not freaking out." "I mean, internally, yes, but also doesn't change anything. You're still the woman who laughed at my daughter's knock-knock jokes." She smiled. And for the first time in a long time, Ian felt something warm twist in his chest. "I hope." After dinner, Gianna insisted on driving them home. Her driver pulled up outside Ian's walk-up building, and she stepped out to help Gabai with her seatbelt. "Thank you for dinner," Gabai said sweetly, tugging at her coat. Gianna crouched. "You're welcome, you're a very brave girl." Gabai grinned. "My daddy saved your life." Gianna looked up at Ian. "Yes, he did." Ian walked her back to the car, awkward but grateful. "This was really nice, thank you." She hesitated at the door. "Can I see you again?" He blinked. "What?" "Lunch, coffee, anything." "You want to go out with a broke plumber with a kid?" "I want to go out with the man who saved my life and made me feel normal again." He smiled slowly. "Then yeah, you can see me again." She leaned in and kissed his cheek. And just like that, something shifted between them. Something real. The next time Ian saw her, she wasn't in heels or cashmere. She was barefoot in his kitchen, sleeves rolled up, cracking eggs into a chipped bowl while Gabriella sat at the table swinging her legs and humming. He leaned against the doorframe, stunned. "You cook?" Gianna glanced over her shoulder. "I wasn't sure if pancakes were sacred territory, but I figured I'd try my version." "I thought billionaires had private chefs." "I do," she said, whisking with surprising confidence. "But he doesn't make funny faces on the pancakes." Gabriella held up a plate. "She made one that looks like a bunny." Ian raised an eyebrow. "Impressive." Gianna grinned. "Don't get used to it. I nearly set off your smoke alarm." He stepped in, took over the skillet, and flipped a pancake with practiced ease. "Next time, just bring syrup. I've got the rest covered." She leaned beside him, watching. "Next time." He gave her a sideways glance. "Unless that was a one-time kitchen invasion." "I don't do one-time anything." He didn't reply, but something in his chest tightened. Later, Gabriella tugged Gianna to the living room to show her drawings. Ian cleared the dishes, listening to their laughter echo off the peeling walls. It was strange, comforting, even. No one ever stayed long enough to fill this space with warmth. When Gianna rose to leave, Gabriella hugged her tightly. "Can she come again tomorrow?" Gianna crouched. "I have to go to work tomorrow, sweet pea, but maybe soon." "Promise." Ian stepped in. "Let's not pressure her, Gabai." Gianna looked up at him. "It's not pressure, it's a yes." After Gabriella was tucked in, Ian walked Gianna to the door. The hallway light flickered overhead. "Thanks for today," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "She doesn't usually take to people like that." "I don't either," she replied softly, "but she's easy to love." He opened the door. "Be careful out there." She paused on the threshold. "You know, for someone who saved my life, you're pretty terrible at asking me to stay." "I'm not great at things that don't come with a manual." "Good thing I'm not asking for one." She leaned up and kissed him just enough to silence the noise in his head for a moment. Then she disappeared down the stairs, leaving him standing there, heart pounding in the silence. 2 days later, he was back under a rusted sink in a luxury condo when his phone buzzed. He almost ignored it until he saw the caller ID. "Hey," he answered, wiping his hands. "I need a favor," Gianna said, her tone sharper than usual. "What's wrong?" "I'm supposed to be at this charity benefit in 40 minutes. My date bailed. Would you come?" He blinked. "Me, in what, my work boots and flannel?" "I'll send a suit." "Gianna, I don't want anyone else there." He hesitated, then sighed. "Let me call my neighbor to watch Gabi." When he stepped out of the car later that night, he barely recognized himself. The suit was tailored, the driver courteous, the building glittering with chandeliers and velvet ropes. Security waved them through without question. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of gowns and tuxedos. Gianna stood near the entrance, wearing a midnight blue dress that shimmered under the lights. When she spotted him, her expression softened. "You clean up better than I expected," she teased, looping her arm through his. "I feel like a fraud." "You're with me, that's all anyone needs to know." They moved through the crowd. People greeted her with deference, some with envy, a few with thinly veiled curiosity at the man on her arm. Ian kept his back straight and his mouth shut. He wasn't here to impress anyone. But it wasn't easy, especially when a man with salt and pepper hair approached them, his gaze cold and assessing. "Gianna," he said, "didn't expect to see you here or him." Gianna's jaw tightened. "Hello, Richard. This must be your latest project." Ian bristled. Gianna's voice was calm but edged with steel. "This is Ian Granger. He saved my life. What have you done this week?" Richard's lips tightened, still sharp as ever. "Still insufferable as ever," she replied. Richard stalked off. Ian exhaled. "Friend of yours. Board member and a pain in the ass." "You didn't need to defend me." "I did," she said, "because you don't belong in his world, you belong in mine." He looked at her, unsure what to say. Later, as they stood on the rooftop terrace away from the crush of people, the city buzzing below them, she turned to him. "I know this is a lot." "It is. But I meant what I said. I don't care about optics or suits or what people whisper." He studied her. "Then what do you care about?" She stepped closer. "About how you look at me like I'm just a woman, not a brand. About how you talk to Gabriella like she's not a burden, but a gift. About how you didn't ask for a damn thing after you saved me." He didn't speak. The wind tugged at her hair. "So if you're waiting for permission," she said, "you don't need it." He reached for her hand. "I'm not scared of you," he said, "but I'm scared of what this means." She squeezed his fingers. "It means we figure it out together." And for the first time in years, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry everything alone. Gianna hadn't answered a single call since she left the gala. Ian knew because he'd tried only once, but that was all it took to confirm what he feared. Whatever they'd stepped into that night, it had scared her, or maybe scared him. He couldn't tell where her world ended and his began anymore, and the silence was a brutal reminder that maybe they were never meant to overlap. but life didn't pause. Gabriella had a science fair project due, his van's transmission was threatening to quit entirely, and a backed-up sewer line in a commercial bakery had him pulling an overnight shift that left his knuckles raw and his back aching. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about her. It had been 2 weeks when she finally showed up again, not at his apartment, not at his job site, but at Gabriella's school. He spotted her from across the field during the spring carnival, standing beside the cotton candy booth in a simple black blouse and jeans that somehow made her look more untouchable than ever. Gabriella saw her first and took off running, pigtails flying behind her as she launched into Gianna's arms. Ian caught up seconds later, breathless. "I didn't know you were coming," he said, wary. "I wasn't sure I would," she replied, holding Gabriella's hand tightly. "But she sent me an invitation, in glitter glue." Gabriella nodded proudly, "Told her you'd come if I asked nice." Ian folded his arms. "You could have let me know." "I didn't think I deserved a heads up," she said quietly. "Not after I vanished." Gabriella tugged her hand. "Come see my volcano. It erupts with real smoke." Gianna looked up at Ian. His jaw was tight, but he gave a short nod. Inside the gymnasium, the science fair was chaos. Gianna crouched beside Gabriella's project, asking careful questions, scribbling her name on the guest sheet. Ian stood back, watching them. She didn't flinch at the sticky fingers or the noise. She listened to every word like it mattered. After the smoke cleared from the volcano, Gabriella skipped off to join her classmates. Ian turned to Gianna. "Why'd you really come?" She didn't look at him. "I needed time. After the gala, things got complicated. The board's been watching me closer than ever. Richard's been whispering about conflicts of interest." "I'm not a scandal," he said. "No," she replied. "You're the first real thing I've had in years." A beat passed. "I didn't walk away because didn't care," she added. "I walked away because cared more than I was ready for." He exhaled. "You can't disappear every time something feels too big." "I know, I'm trying." He studied her. "You walked into this gym like you belonged here. That means something." She turned to him fully. "I want to belong here, with you, with her." He hesitated. "Gabriella, she gets attached fast." "So do I." That night, she came home with them. It wasn't planned. Gabriella asked if she could stay for dinner. Ian was going to say no, but when he saw Gianna kneeling to help with her shoes, he couldn't. Gianna took over the kitchen, looking up recipes on her phone while Ian chopped vegetables. Gabriella danced between them, narrating every movement like it was her own cooking show. After dinner, Ian found Gianna on the fire escape, a blanket around her shoulders and a cup of tea in her hands. "You okay?" he asked, stepping outside. She nodded. "I forgot how quiet the world can be when you're not running it." He sat beside her. The metal railing creaked beneath their weight. "I want to offer you something," she said, "and not because I think you need help." His stomach tensed. "Gianna." "Just listen," she interrupted gently. "I bought a building in Greenpoint last year. It's been sitting empty while I figure out what to do with it. Top floor's a 3-bedroom, rent-free, no strings, just a safer place for you and Gabriella." He stared at her, stunned. "I won't be your charity case," he said quietly. "You wouldn't be. You'd be someone care about living somewhere safer." "I don't want her to think we got here because of who I'm dating." "Then tell her it's because of who you are." He looked away, jaw tight. "I've worked every day of her life to give her something real. I won't let anyone rewrite that." "I wouldn't dare," she said, "but maybe you don't have to keep doing it alone." The silence stretched between them. Finally, he asked, "Why me?" Gianna exhaled. "Because you didn't flinch when told you who I was, because you didn't ask for anything, because when I look at you, I see the man I wish my father had been." That cracked something in him. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "You scare the hell out of me," he admitted. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Good, then we're even." Inside, Gabriella called out from the living room, "Can we watch a movie?" Gianna smiled. "What's the rule on popcorn in the couch cushions?" Ian stood. "If you find it later, it's a snack." She laughed softly and followed him inside. And for the first time in a long time, the apartment didn't feel temporary. It felt like the beginning of something that could last. The elevator doors opened into a sunlit apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and polished concrete floors. Gabriella ran ahead, her little sneakers squeaking against the polished surface as she peeked into each room with wide eyes. "Is this really all ours?" she whispered. Ian stepped in behind her, taking in the space with a cautious breath. "It's temporary," he said carefully. "We're just checking it out." Gianna looked over at him from the balcony doorway. "It's yours as long as you want it." He didn't answer. Instead, he moved toward the kitchen, running a hand along the stone countertop. Everything gleamed. The appliances looked like they belonged in a showroom. He opened a cabinet and found it fully stocked. Gabriella was already climbing into a stool at the island. "There's a whole drawer just for snacks." Gianna walked over and set down a small box beside her. "I thought she might like these. They were my favorite when I was her age." Ian picked it up, a puzzle set, still in its wrapping. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," she said, then paused. "I know you're still not sure how to feel about all this." "It's a lot," he admitted. "It's not just the space, it's what it means." Gianna leaned her hip against the counter. "You think it means I'm trying to fix something?" "Isn't that what people like you do? See a problem, throw money at it." She didn't flinch. "Sometimes, but not this time." He met her gaze. "Then what is this?" "A foundation," she said. "Not for charity, for stability, for building something that doesn't fall apart the first time life throws a punch." He looked at Gabriella, who was focused on peeling the corner of the puzzle box. "She's had enough instability." "That's why I'm here." Later that week, Gianna invited Ian to a private event, a tech summit she was hosting at Zeller Tech's headquarters. She insisted he come as himself, no suits, no pretenses, just him. He arrived in a clean button-down and dark jeans, feeling out of place the second he stepped inside the glass-paneled lobby. The room was filled with industry titans and reporters, but Gianna was already waiting at the center, surrounded by executives. When she saw him, she excused herself without hesitation and crossed the room. "You came," she said, her eyes lighting with something private. "You said come as I am," he replied, "so here I am." "I want you to meet someone," she said, motioning to an older man by the display wall. "That's Henry Tanaka. He's the head of our engineering division. Been with the company since before I was born." Henry extended a hand. "So you're the man who brought our CEO back to life." Ian shook it, just did what anyone with CPR training would do. Henry chuckled. "You clearly haven't ridden the subway in this city." Gianna watched the exchange quietly. When Ian glanced at her, she gave a small nod, like she knew what he was thinking. After the event, they walked through the emptying lobby together. Ian looked up at the towering Zeller Tech sign above the front desk. "I still don't get it," he said. "Out of everyone in your world, why me?" "I've had years surrounded by people who want something from me. You didn't. You gave me something without knowing who I was. That has weight." He stopped walking. "Yeah, well, I didn't plan on falling for someone who lives in skyscrapers." She took his hand. "I didn't plan on falling for someone who fixes broken things with nothing more than grit and stubbornness." He smiled, then looked down at their joined hands. Gabriella's been sleeping better. Gianna tilted her head. Is that your way of saying you're settling in? I'm saying she's finally dreaming without waking up scared. That means something. Gianna stepped closer. And what about you? I'm still figuring it out, but I know I'm not running. Later that month, Gianna invited them both to a small gathering at her grandfather's estate upstate, a quiet weekend with just a few close associates and family. Ian was hesitant. Gabriella had never left the city before. But when they arrived, the girl lit up at the sight of open grass, a backyard pond, and rows of apple trees. Gianna's grandfather, a stern man with silver hair and sharp observation, greeted them on the porch. He studied Ian for a long moment before nodding once. I hear you saved my granddaughter's life, he said. That makes you family. Ian didn't know how to respond to that, but the old man clapped him on the shoulder and ushered them inside with surprising warmth. That night, after Gabriella had fallen asleep in a guest bedroom, and the air outside cooled to a crisp breeze, Ian and Gianna stood under the stars on the back patio. She's never had space like this, he said, hands in his pockets. She was chasing fireflies like she'd never seen one before. I used to do the same thing, Gianna said, before everything changed, before my name became a company. He looked at her carefully. Do you ever wish you could go back? She shook her head. I used to, but not anymore, not since meeting you. He hesitated, then pulled a small wrapped object from his jacket. This is for you. She blinked. You got me something. It's not jewelry or anything flashy, he said, just something that felt right. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a tiny glass pendant inside the glass, a swirl of pink and blue, frozen mid-drift. It's a piece of sea glass Gabriella found near the Hudson, he said. She wanted to keep it, but told her it might mean more to you. Gianna's voice was soft. It's beautiful. She called it a second chance star, said it looked like the kind of thing that comes after a storm. Gianna didn't speak right away. She just slipped the pendant over her head and stepped into him, wrapping her arms around his waist. He held her there, the silence between them full of unspoken things that no longer needed to be said. The next morning, as they drove back to the city, Gabriella fell asleep with her head in Gianna's lap, clutching a new stuffed animal from the estate gift shop. Ian looked over from the driver's seat. You realize she's going to start expecting weekend retreats now. Gianna smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Gabriella's face. That's fine. I've got a whole life to spoil her. He reached over and took her hand. You already have. And as the skyline reappeared on the horizon, glittering in the morning sun, it wasn't a return to real life. It was the beginning of a new one built not on money or rescue or chance, but on something stronger. Love earned and freely given. Gianna stood in the corner of the rehearsal space, arms crossed as she watched Gabriella spin in a too large tutu. The little girl's laughter echoed through the vaulted studio, her feet barely keeping rhythm with the piano in the far corner. Despite the chaos, her joy was contagious. Gianna glanced at Ian, who was kneeling, adjusting one of the elastic straps on the ballet slippers they'd borrowed from the school. She's taking this very seriously, Gianna said, leaning against the mirrored wall. Ian looked up, brushing a curl from Gabriella's face. She thinks she's dancing for royalty. Maybe she is, Gianna said. You're the closest thing to a king in her eyes. He stood slowly, wiping his hands on his jeans. You're the one who got her into the program. I wouldn't have even known auditions were happening. You're the one who believed she deserved to be there, she said. That's what matters. The instructor clapped twice, and the small group of children scurried to a line. Gabriella turned and gave them a thumbs up before focusing on her starting pose. Gianna turned to Ian. Have you thought more about the offer? He exhaled, gaze fixed on the dance floor. I'm not sure I'm the right fit. You're more than qualified, she said. You've run your own business for almost a decade. You know people, you know how to lead. We need someone like that on the community advisory board. It's a big leap, he murmured. So was loving me. He looked at her now, really looked. She was wearing a dark green blouse tucked into trousers, her hair twisted up casually, no jewelry except for a thin chain at her neck. She looked as at home here as she had at the gala, and yet something about this moment felt more grounded, more real. I don't want to be a charity case, he said. You never have been, she replied. This isn't a handout, it's a seat at the table, and I want you there because you'll challenge us, because you'll speak up when it matters. Ian crossed his arms. You're not afraid I'll embarrass you. She stepped closer. The only thing that would embarrass me is if I built a company that didn't reflect the kind of man I love. The words hung there, heavy and certain. You love me? He asked. She didn't blink. I do. His lips parted, but no words came. Before he could answer, the instructor clapped again, signaling the end of class. Gabriella ran toward them, breathless and beaming. Did you see my turn? I didn't fall this time. You were amazing, Gianna said, crouching as Gabriella flung her arms around her neck. Ian knelt beside them, brushing a hand through his daughter's hair. You're a star, Gabby. Can we celebrate with ice cream? She asked, hopeful. Ian looked at Gianna. You up for that? I'll drive, she said. Gabriella grinned. Can I pick the music? Only if it's not that one song with the dancing cats, Gianna teased. Gabriella giggled. No promises. Inside the car, Gabriella dozed off halfway into her strawberry cone, her head resting against Ian's arm. Gianna turned off the radio and glanced over. I meant what I said, you know. He looked at her. I love you, she said again. Not just because you're kind, or because you saved me, but because you see me, and you let me see you too. He swallowed hard. I've spent so long doing everything on my own. It's strange having someone beside me who doesn't ask to be rescued, just asks to stay. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Ian reached across the console and took her hand. Then, I guess it's my turn to say it. She waited. I love you too, Gianna. I didn't plan it, didn't expect it, but it's the most certain thing I've ever felt. Her fingers tightened around his. The next few weeks passed in a blur of small changes that felt monumental. Ian accepted the board seat, attending his first meeting in a borrowed blazer, speaking with clarity and confidence as he presented ideas for improving neighborhood outreach programs. Gianna sat in the back row, listening, saying nothing but her smile never faded. Gabriella started dance lessons officially, proudly showing off her registration badge and insisting on practicing in the hallway every night. And one morning, Ian found a small envelope on the kitchen table with his name written in perfect cursive. Inside was a key, a brass one, slightly worn. He looked up at Gianna, who stood at the stove flipping pancakes. What's this? She turned to the Greenpoint apartment, had it cut for you, for us. He stared at it. You're sure? Her smile was quiet but unwavering. I've never been more sure. That night they moved in. Gabriella chose the bedroom with the biggest window, pinning glow-in-the-dark stars to the ceiling. Ian carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs, refusing help from the movers. Gianna unpacked the kitchen in silence, placing dishes like she'd already imagined them there for months. When the last box was gone and Gabriella was asleep, Ian stood at the window, looking out over the city. Gianna joined him. Feels different, doesn't it? He nodded. Feels like home. She slipped her arms around his waist. That's because it is. He turned in her arms. I want to build something with you, not just a life, A future, something solid. You already have, she said. I mean it, he said. All in, no halfway, no holding back. She leaned into him. Then I'm in too. 3 months later, they stood in a small garden behind a brownstone in Brooklyn, surrounded by close friends and a few family members. It wasn't a grand affair, no press, no headlines. Just a white dress, a tailored suit, and a little girl in a daisy crown who walked ahead of them scattering petals from a basket she insisted on carrying herself. When the officiant asked if they promised to love each other without condition, Ian didn't hesitate. I already do. Gianna's voice was steady, and always will. As they kissed, Gabriella threw the rest of the petals into the air and shouted, "Best day ever." Later, as the sun dipped low and the city lit up beyond the garden wall, they danced barefoot under string lights while Gabriella twirled between them, arms stretched wide. And for the first time in any of their lives, there was no fear of what came next. Only everything they had built together.